browser? That's great. Which of the following cannot be parsed by a browser? Indeed. Libraries are a collection of programming shortcuts in one language. Java blank, just short for JavaScript.
It's not.
Thank you. You're so kind to humor me. Adhering to web standards includes validation of CSS and JSS, meeting accessibility standards, and meeting semantic guidelines. Excellent, excellent. Woohoo! We got them all right. Okay, so on to, I think we got most folks back, on to building a website. Hey, they turned the air on.
I was going to say it's part 2, how to get air conditioning.
I know, right? Well, the answer is just ask. So, considerations before starting to build a website. What is the purpose of the site, right? Like, why do I want this website? Am I just trying to inform people? Am I trying to attract new leads? Am I trying to get people to buy stuff? Like, why am I building this website? Really think about that. Sometimes it seems obvious, but not always. Hosting and a domain name, right? Where are the files for this site going to live, and how are people going to access it? Domain name registration should probably not cost more than about $15 a year for your typical URL. Hosting should not cost more than about $50 a year, and that's for like a personal site. If you're going to do something bigger or fancier, then yes.
So I've recently started buying more domains.
Okay.
Kind of cover my bases.
You have a domain addiction.
My foresight. I kind of wish there were a couple I bought years ago.
Yeah?
Yeah. So is this something that's still like, what's with the like .head, for instance, or .tv? Like, how is this going to affect? You know, like if somebody took my company name but had a something else.
Well, there's not a lot you can do about that. You can try to buy it out from under them.
So by possibly buying these.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like
I'm not an erotic mess. It might be. They're not expensive either. They're like $12 a piece.
I mean, it's up to you. Like, there's always like that line where you're like, is it worth it? Is it worth it? No.
Yeah, it's only like 3 or 4. It's
Right,
not
right.
like 300.
No,
It's not like I can't pay my bills.
The registrar is coming to go.
Okay.
I'm curious, just because I had to make my own domain name once for like a portfolio. I made it .org. Are there, what domain names are there restrictions on? Because I'm like,
the common ones are not like super, like .com, .org, and .net are like, it's kind of fair game. Supposedly, org is supposed to be for nonprofits, but nobody enforces that. The variation would be that some country level domains, they're called like TLDs, top level domains.
yeah.
Some country-specific TLDs will actually require proof that you have like a business in that country or a residence in that country. They'll require you to register from that country. Some not so much, but yeah. No, so it's a wild world out there. You know, select your domain name with care. I would say if you get the opportunity to test it, definitely do. Experts Exchange used to not have a hyphen in it, if I'm not mistaken, and they kind of elided it in an interesting way. So hosting should not cost more than about $50 a year, and that's for like a personal domain. It depends really also on what you need. So server-side tech might include like specific programming languages, right? So we know that servers parse different server-side languages. If you need something to support Elixir, well, Elixir is fairly new. You might have more of a challenge finding a server that supports that. If you need certain levels of security, if you're transmitting financial data or health information, then you might probably need different things on the server side than somebody who's just, creating a flat informational site about their stained glass business. Which, real example, tends to do that. Yes?
So provided there's all those things, if you were to like do it from the bottom up hosting and domain, if you were to make like, I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna sell my like dinky widgets, would it probably be easier just to do like a Squarespace or Wix? Because I know they have things integrated where you can do
Eventually,
transactions?
they'll have e-commerce. Yeah, so a lot of e-commerce is not that crazy. So when I say like health information or financial information, I'm talking about like kind of next level stuff.
okay.
I'm not talking about like a basic credit card transaction. That's considered kind of table stakes these days. So most hosting providers you'll find will have an e-commerce functionality that supports you. But certainly you should, we'll talk more about Squarespace and Wix. Whether to build it yourself or hire someone to do it for you. So, user experience and information architecture. So a user-friendly, well-architected site will deepen engagement, increase conversion. So when we talk about what is the point of my website, I'm usually trying to get people to do something, right? That's conversion. Whatever, getting them to do whatever it was that you wanted them to do, that's in e-marketing lingo referred to as conversion. Raise satisfaction. So one of the examples that I like to give here about satisfaction is that we have some websites that we have no choice but to use, right? Anybody? Taxes, government stuff? Right. We have websites that we have no choice but to use, and a better, more user-friendly, more well-architected site will increase satisfaction. So the people that have to use your service won't mind so much. And bring users back. So when you do have a choice, you are probably going to pick the site that helps you accomplish your user goals more easily. And so as somebody who's building a website, you want to be the one that helps your users accomplish their goals. Questions? We're going to go a little bit more into this too. So a couple of kind of fundamental tools of user experience and information architecture are the sitemap and the decision tree. So this is a little bit more of a UX one, and this is a little bit more information architecture. But the idea being that even if I'm building a site for myself alone, I'm going to do this on a napkin. I'm going to figure out how am I going to slice up the information on my site into sections. Where, like, what do I have? What do I want to say? What do I want people to be able to find? Am I going to split it up into pages or just like sections on one page, or like, what does this look like? And so I'm going to chunk this out. And here, this is a really complex one with like, six sections up here, many of which have sub-pages, and some of them have interrelated, sets. But yeah, so this is a more complex sitemap. And then over here is a decision tree. And this is a really good thing to keep in mind when you have a somewhat complex goal for your users. And by somewhat complex, I mean if you want them to check out, like you want them to buy something and make it through a checkout process, it's worth considering, when they enter your flow, your user flow, what is the first choice they have in front of them? Are you going to offer them an option to go off to some informational thing, or are you going to try to send them right to, the product information and like checkout? Is it one-click checkout? Let's go back to the Amazon example, right? Or do we try to, upsell them on some kind of extra warranty and service plan and give them all the details and the full history and what's the word when you sell products? I've totally lost it. It'll come to me. Provenance of the thing. Which would have been funnier if I thought of it at the time. So basically, how many options do we give them? Do we give them too many options? Do we give them the right options? How many chances do they have to bail out? What do we offer them if they try to leave? And then how do we get them where we really want them to go? So definitely good stuff worth thinking about. We actually, I feel like we don't even necessarily do it justice in this particular class, but we have a really robust community of user experience professionals here in Philadelphia. They're fantastic, they're caring, wonderful, helpful people. If you're interested in UX, just be like, hey, I might be interested in UX, and 7 people want to help you. Our Slack. There's also an organization called Philly CHI, CHI, Computer Human Interaction, which is also really wonderful folks. So there's a huge community for it here in Philly, and we have a handful of classes that focus on a deeper dive into UX. So one of them is just an intro to UX and all the disciplines that fall under that, which include things like design, like user design, user testing, information architecture, and we don't have classes yet for every single one of those things, but some of them we are definitely planning on building out. So we have excited professionals who are looking at building those classes out for us, and certainly available to answer questions. So love those folks. They do a lot of really, really great work. I've been at shops where we have people who do just this, you know. I've been at shops where this is the designer. And that goes well, it goes poorly, and it's a mix.
What's a shop? Like companies?
Company, yeah, what is a shop? Just places that I've worked, you know, teams that I've worked on, or departments that I worked in. It's just, this shop, that shop.
Is that what people call it?
Sometimes, yeah, people will call it that. Yeah. Other questions? Questions about UX? Site maps, decision trees, this is awesome stuff. Also kind of in this realm would be what are called wireframes, which a lot of times you'll see they're like the coloring book version of what the website's going to wind up looking like. The idea being that it gives you a good idea of layout and features, and sometimes like scale, like how big and prominent should one thing be versus another, but without actually like continuing the design of things. So WYSIWYG, we talked about this a little bit earlier, WYSIWYG versus hand coding. WYSIWYG editors make lots of assumptions about what you intended to write or what you intended to build, and a lot of times they guess wrong. And what that means is that they're writing weird, messy code. And that makes the job of professionals really, really difficult. Again, written poorly and filled with junk. And what that means is that if I take, you know, this box of text, right, and I start out with it here on the page, and I put an image here, and then I grab the text and I move it down here. So now the WYSIWYG editor, the software that you're trying to make understand your will, has artifacts, right? Initially you put the thing here, and it makes decisions about that. And then you move it here, and it doesn't necessarily know which decisions it's okay to undo here, and which ones are still maybe needed to keep that image over here. So you end up with like a lot of history. You end up with a lot of junk. And that makes it really, really interesting if you're ever going to hand off that site to a developer. But likewise, as developers, we also make weird decisions. And so one of the jokes that I like to make is that if I go back and look at something that I wrote 6 months, 2, 3 years ago, I'm going to be like, what was I thinking? What idiot wrote this? You know, and the answer is, of course, it's always me. So if you ever wanted to travel back in time and fight with a younger version of yourself, then coding is the place for you.
With the WYSIWYG, like a Squarespace template, for instance, would it be safer to use it if you didn't move a lot of things around and didn't customize it as much and just dropped your picture, like your media and your text, and kind of kept it very simple?
So something that I have seen is that if you take, you know, your page that you're building, right, and you work on it for a while and you iterate on it, and you've got, you know, some things move, and somebody reviews it, and you know, you look at it and you bring it back a few times, and maybe something goes weird, right? Definitely seen that happen. If you start over and rebuild from the beginning, but with like your final draft, that can make it a lot better. So sometimes yes. The question being whether it's good to keep things really simple in a WYSIWYG editor. And I say that you don't have to keep it simple, but you might want to go back to something simple at the end.
So for the time being, it's like I own a business and I'm an artist. I'm redoing my website for my business, which isn't art related. So I used format.com to build a really quick portfolio site, and I didn't make many changes.
Yeah. So if you have,
then it's also not forever kind of thing, and I'm not asking people to buy anything.
Right, yeah, using one of these services, I mean, a lot of the junk comes from making changes and iterating, and so I think if you just drop it in, but again, also if you're not going to hand it off to a professional, it's not a big deal. So one of the things that we say is to truly get a good understanding of what you're building and why it all works the way that it works. Learning the fundamentals, hand coding stuff is really, really valuable. And once you know how to do that, there are no limits to what you can build, which is probably honestly true. One of the things that I like to say though is that while in software everything is possible, some things are not a good idea. So, all that said, if all you need is a CMS, just use CMS. I am not here to CMS shame anybody. If you want to be a WordPress user, if you want to be a Wix user, like if that's what works for you, you should do that. I definitely think that like coding is super fun, and HTML and CSS and JavaScript are really going to help you have a better understanding of what you're doing. But if you're just trying to friggin' build a website and get it on the face of the internet, then like just do what you gotta do. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Yes.
I'm offering to make friends' websites just to get experience using CMSs. Would I be able to look at the script, via Chrome to understand the structure of it via HTML and CSS?
Sometimes, but you're gonna see all that junk. So it might be more confusing than it's worth. You might be better off. It will often be helpful, if somebody hands me their Wix site and says, like, why is it doing this weird thing? How do I make it do X? I can look at the code, but I don't know how to answer them in WYSIWYG. I don't know how to say like, oh, drag that thing from the left to the right and it'll just work like magic. I know what's actually wrong with it.
Reading it and seeing it, just for educational purposes.
Probably. I mean, you're going to learn from that how the CMS is making choices, how WYSIWYG is making its decisions, maybe. So I don't know that that's like a fantastic resource for figuring out how things work. But I mean, definitely look at sites, and we'll look at that in just a moment. So, what languages to use? People ask all the time, what should I learn? What am I going to build in? And the answer is, unfortunately, that super depends. So, HTML and CSS, since they hold the content of your site and they style the content of your site to make it pretty, are almost certainly going to be used. You can build a site that's just HTML and CSS, and it will be fine. Especially because CSS is getting a lot fancier in the more recent versions. You can do some like slight animations where you like fade things in and out nicely, and you can like move things gently from here to there. So it's actually doing a little bit of the heavy lifting that used to only be done in JavaScript. But JavaScript still is likely to be used for any kind of interactivity. So if you're actually changing any content or showing and hiding large portions of information, you're very, very likely to be using JavaScript. Of course, also if you want to do any kind of like AJAX form submission, that's nice smooth interaction with the backend, you're very likely to use JavaScript. Now, server-side languages will often be used for any kind of data storage or retrieval. As we kind of talked about with the Amazon example, what kind of database are we querying? Are we handling like logins, things like that? So you may or may not actually need a server-side language depending on the actual functionality of your site. So unfortunately, I can't really answer your question. HTML and CSS will very likely come in handy. JavaScript too. Server-side languages are awesome. But you might not need those first. Yes.
So earlier you made a joke about only writing JavaScript and just playing along online. A lot of people say like they only do Ruby or something Rails or something like that, or Python. So is it too much information to say that like you're able to write or in all these languages, or is it kind of like being a doctor that you have to be a dermatologist, you have to be a pediatrician? Like, do you just have to only write, one specific or?
That's a great question about whether it makes sense to learn a lot of languages or whether you need to specialize. And I think that that people take really different approaches to that. So I am primarily a front-ender. I know HTML and CSS pretty much back and forth. JavaScript I'm really good at, better than most people. Python, I write Python. I'm not good at it, but I write Python. And I haven't really touched any other languages, at least not in a long time. I used to write .NET. But yeah, so it totally varies. People are very into like the full stack label, which means that you do the front end stuff and the server side stuff. So it's good to know a server side language because it means that you can build a full site if you need to. Like with additional functionality beyond what can be done in the front end. So I definitely think that there's value to that, but specialization is also great. It changes the kind of team you can work on. To say like, if you're a full stack engineer, right? If you can write pretty good server side code, some language, any language really, Ruby and Python are probably the biggest, most common popular ones right now. If you can write the front end and Ruby or Python, you can get a job in a lot of small teams where they just want somebody who can do the whole shebang. If you specialize and say like, I am a JavaScripter, and in fact don't even really like CSS that much, then you're going to need to find a home on a much bigger team where you have other specialists as well. Somebody who just focuses on the HTML and CSS, somebody who's writing all the Python and Ruby for you. So it depends. There's different kinds of settings. There's only so many hours in the day. You kind of got to pick where you can focus. That's a great question. Yeah, true.
With the kind of, how you said WordPress operates, are there like bits that you can get from people that would do the kind of server side, like if you want like it to do a function, I know somebody has that, but I don't know how to do it. Is that the kind of stuff you could find via open source, either buying it and incorporate it via WordPress like that?
Yeah, the question is whether if you don't want to learn how to program a chunk of the stack for yourself, that you can go out and somewhere and get it. And I think the answer is most of the time, yes. It's going to be possibly a little bit tricky to integrate the parts that you do know and the parts that you don't know. But that's kind of the case no matter what. So probably one of the places that you'll see that really happen a lot is in the Node community. So Node is an implementation of JavaScript that runs on the server. So I like Node because it allows me to write server-side code in a language I already know. And Node has this community, this platform called Node Package Manager, NPM. And NPM, you maybe have heard of. It's like kind of crazy in many ways. But essentially, if you need to write a program that does a certain thing, you can go on Node Package Manager and like search for it and be like, has anybody written a package that does X? And you put it in their little search bar, and they spit you back a couple likely candidates, and you say like, oh yeah, I can pick between this one and this one. Oh, this one has this feature. This one doesn't seem to be very well supported or maintained, and you can kind of pick and choose. But then you do still have to figure out how to integrate it and stuff. So some familiarity is definitely going to be helpful, but yeah, you can use stuff too. Yeah.
Can you just repeat what you said? A node is an implementation that allows you.
Node is JavaScript run on a server instead of in a browser. You got it.
That's N or M?
Node, Node.js.
Okay, so it's not called JavaScript anymore. What's on the server side is called Node.
It is still JavaScript, but it's
Yeah.
referred to as
Okay.
Node. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it could be on base, but when you say you are front end HTML, what does that entail?
Front end is this stuff up here, the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript. The fact that I write some Python means that I can call myself full stack. I also write a JavaScript library which uses Node, and a JavaScript framework that uses Node. I write Angular, and so that also makes me full stack because I write Node too, technically, even though it is JavaScript. Yeah, I know, it is very convoluted. Everybody kind of gets up in everybody else's business, and the joke is that anything that can be written in JavaScript will. So JavaScript is a great language to learn, but it is a big old mess. Okay, we should get going because we're running out of time. So in here, I'm going to show a very, very quick demo about, this one happens to be about flowed text, but what I'm going to show is specifically about the Chrome inspection tool. So I'm in Chrome browser right now, and what I'm going to do is I'm just, in the browser like anybody anywhere, and I'm going to right-click on this text. And when I right-click on it, you see a bunch of my weirdo plugins, but down here is the word inspect. And when I open up the inspector, I get some additional information down here in this panel. I'm going to make it like super big. And what you can see is the actual HTML that's being rendered by my browser on my screen. So I mentioned that the files get sent from the server to your computer, and they get shown by your browser. So this is a copy of the files. This is not the actual files themselves that live on the host. This is my little version that's been sent down to me in my browser. And what I can do is not only investigate how something has been put together, as Sri was suggesting earlier. If you go in and you actually look at the code of the site, you can kind of figure out how things tick. But you can also make changes. So again, this is just my local version, and over here on the left, I have the HTML. You can see I have a paragraph that's wrapped in this p tag and some little brackets. This down here represents an anchor or a link, and you can see there's a bunch of information on there. And then over here on the right, this is the CSS. So this is the styles that are affecting how this particular paragraph is being displayed. You can see there's like a line height thing being set there, and by turning these things off and on, I can change how it's being displayed on the screen. Again, this is just my local copy of these files. I'm not changing anything on the server. I'm not breaking the website for anybody else. I'm just goofing off. And what I can do is I can make like pretty significant changes, right? Like I can turn that whole paragraph red by just fiddling with the CSS right there in the browser. So this is one of the things that I like to show. You can sometimes dig into the JavaScript that makes things work. But it's a little bit tougher. It's doable for sure. The HTML and the CSS are pretty easy to fool around with once you get the hang of the tools. So if you're interested in how things tick, or if you see somebody else's website that you're really interested in how they did something, you can use the inspection tools to crack it open and see how it works. Because again, the browser just gets a copy of the files from the server and gives them to your browser, and your browser displays them. So whatever your browser is getting, you now have access to. You can't see any of the PHP that went into building that site because that all happens on the server. That's not what gets sent back to the browser. So I can't necessarily figure it out that deeply. But if I'm interested in how something was constructed on the front end in the HTML, the JavaScript, and the CSS, I can essentially analyze that or diagnose that. Yeah.
So if you ever send your portfolio, will some employers ask to see that?
Sure. Yeah.
See the, they want to see the code, see how you wrote.
Absolutely. Code samples. So if you have like a GitHub account, that's kind of a big one. People, a lot of times people put projects out on what's called GitHub for just fooling around with. But yeah, code samples, portfolio stuff, that's definitely something that employers will ask for. A lot of times in tech, they'll want like an actual exercise, like they'll give you a task to do, whether that's live and in person or as like a take-home assignment or whatever. Yeah, good question. I'm going to keep cooking because I know we're almost out of time. And I certainly welcome conversation after class and also via email. I'm so sorry, we're a little bit rushed here towards the end. So server-side languages, what are the differences? Syntax is the big answer to that question, which is the set of rules that define combinations of symbols that make this a correctly structured program. So I'll show an example of that in a minute, but languages have different strengths and philosophies. You know, why did somebody create this language, right? Why did somebody create Elixir when C++ was already out there? You know, like they had a reason for making this, and the reason was to emphasize something they didn't feel was being well served by what already existed. And so they will be a little bit different. Like sometimes things just jive with you better in one language than another. I feel that way about frameworks very strongly. Like I write Angular, I do not like Angular. Angular does not work the way my brain works. I've tried a little bit of React, that feels a lot better. You know, like people created all these languages and softwares, and people with their mushy, sticky brains that will either work well with my mushy, sticky brain or not. And so you'll find, if you find that you have difficulty with one, that doesn't mean you're going to have difficulty with all of them. Some of them are going to be easy, some of them are going to be harder. Yeah.
Is there a text or online reference that gives you a quick understanding of the basic differences or strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah. I'm going to show like a syntax thing with it.
Just a question.
Yes, sorry. The question was about whether there's a good online reference for comparing different languages. I would say that I feel like there's not necessarily a great, super comprehensive one that talks about like philosophies behind all the different languages. What you're going to want to look for is to like narrow it down to a couple. And then if you Google, for example, like Python versus Ruby, you'll find a lot of those. So I would say kind of like see if you can narrow it down based on like what people you have available to teach you. So again, what you choose will depend on what you're already familiar with or what you want to learn. What your hosting supports. If you already have hosting, you might be limited by that. And then community and documentation. So what do you have around you? You know, how good are the docs? How, you know, what kind of classes do you have available for you to learn? What do your friends know? People that you feel comfortable asking questions. You know, if PyCon is landing on your doorstep next year, maybe you want to learn Python and go experience what the convention might be like, or go get exposed to all those experts. So there's definitely like a pretty significant community factor around that. So a brief overview of syntax. There's also, there's a site, and I forget what it's called. I want to say it's like helloworld.de or something like that. I think it's a German site. Hello World is considered to be like the most basic program that you start with in any language. It is the first thing you learn is how to print the words hello world to the screen. Every language will start with this pretty much universally. And so Hello World, this site that I'm talking about, which is a Hello World comparison, has Hello World in like every language, like pretty much every programming language, and you can see how they're all different. So in PHP, it might look something like this. In Java, it's a little bit more complicated because Java. Python and Ruby are actually pretty similar. I don't know if you can see the difference here, but this is print with a parentheses, single quotes and a closed parenthesis. Here it's puts with single quotes but no parentheses. And then PHP up here was echo, and then hello world, and then that's the same one, which you cannot tell at all. And then just, you know, this is not a server-side language, but JavaScript is a programming language, and this is one way that you could do hello world in JavaScript. So essentially, we're talking about like different combinations of little symbols that dictate what is a program in this language. And again, they have different philosophies. So to build a website, you will probably need a simple text editor or code editor, such as Sublime Text, Code, which is from Visual Studio, or Text Wrangler to write your code. Many can be found for free. I believe all three of these are free. A web browser, of course. For something simple, you're going to want a file transfer protocol, FTP, which gets the files from your computer to the host. Many are free, again. I use CyberDuck. Optionally, you might have an image editor, something like Sketch, GIMP, UrbanView, Photoshop, if you're doing something graphical for your site. Some of them are available for free. You can get a membership, you can get like a month of Adobe Photoshop for, I want to say, like $20. And then if you get a little bit deeper into it, you might have an IDE that works with your specific language and tool set, something like WebStorm, Atom, PyCharm. I think I mentioned all those earlier. You will likely get involved with a command line interface, a CLI. And those are like the hacker program. It's black, green. It doesn't have to be black or green. Mine's not black or green. That you can kind of like hop around your folders and execute different commands really, really quickly. We have a class on that. Yeah, it's called Intro to the Command Line, great class. And possibly build tools, which help you streamline your process and kind of integrate a lot of different things. So if you get into a more complex build, then you might have other stuff. So Webpack, Grunt, Gulp, linters, things like that. So these are terms that you probably don't have to worry about for quite some time. But if you get into a more complex setup, you're likely to get involved with build tools. And we have a class on that too. So I know we're going to talk about the front end. So on a robust team of all specialists, you know, somebody like Comcast is going to have a team like this. You might have a front end team, which includes a UX designer, maybe a graphic designer who's really concerned with things more like spacing and shadows and colors and gradients. The web developer, which would be somebody who writes your HTML, your JavaScript, your CSS. I should note that none of these titles are totally written in stone. Different companies call them all different things. So web developers, just software developers, software engineers. I mean, well, we'll see software engineer falls a little bit lower too. But the titles are totally up in the air. They could be called like a HTML ninja. Don't hold it. On the back end, you traditionally might have a server admin. Now that most people are doing hosting in the cloud, you might have a DevOps person who manages essentially your Amazon Web Services. A database admin, somebody who's in charge of making sure that the databases are in good shape. And a software engineer who might be the person writing your Python. And then over the whole project, you're likely to have somebody who's in charge of quality assurance, QA. These are awesome people. They tend to be the people that drive developers nuts because they keep finding things that are wrong. But their job is super hard and very, very, very important. Basically, they're super detail-oriented people who go through and click on a million things in a billion combinations and try to figure out whether anything could possibly be wrong. And then, of course, project managers. So project managers are responsible for a lot of times timelines, budgets, things like that. Clearing blockers, they're kind of just like the shepherd of a lot of the process. Question? Yes.
A real world example. So with like Amazon, the customers, us, we're looking at what the front end people are doing, right? But saying like if there's a big sale and the website crashes, then the back end people are fixing the website and the front end people aren't doing that because they,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, definitely. The backend people might also be interested in, how quickly the server is responding. So if a lot of people are making requests all at the same time and like searching for some, making lots of really big queries, like everybody's looking for blue, right? If you search for Amazon for blue, it's probably going to be a pretty intensive query of their database. It's going to require a lot of searching, and so that like they'll be interested in how fast it's responding.
I was just gonna ask if GDI offers classes on server admin, database admin, or DevOps.
We sadly do not really offer too many classes in there. We have database stuff, so we have like a intro to a database design class,
Okay.
which talks about like how to kind of structure your data. We have an intro to SQL class, which kind of is how to retrieve data. And we have a fantastic class which we rewrote this year, which is called Intro to the Full Stack, which is more about like hosting.
Okay.
And that's a fantastic one that we're definitely intending to bring back in the fall. Yes.
As I go deeper into this and take online classes and things, one of the issues that always pops up for me is even if you're a front-end developer, shouldn't you have to understand a certain amount of how the back-end works to properly develop?
Preferably. Yeah, preferably. Certainly you become a more valuable asset if you have a good understanding of the back end, even as a front-end developer, yes. Yeah. Definitely. I mean, there's holes in my knowledge, for sure. And again, that kind of comes back to like only so many hours in the day. But yeah, a lot of times it comes down to like newer technologies. So, for example, the product that I most recently worked on, we were using Docker containers for deployment, and Docker, man, someday I'll get around to figuring out what the heck is going on there. But, I get the gist of it. Basically it's like virtual machines where you set up the full environment that your server needs to live on, and you use those for deployment, but it's a mess. So definitely, and understanding is super good.
Okay.
If anybody has to bug, again, I totally understand. If you're looking to hire a developer, we cover the 3 R's. References, talk to people who've worked with that developer, were they prompt, pleasant, and forthright. Requirements, so can they actually do the work that needs to be done? Now this is why a lot of times we'll find people who are just looking to hire a developer come to this class because they want to be able to know what is the work that needs to be done. Do I need to ask if this person knows CSS, or is it really helpful that they know Ruby on Rails? What question do I even need to ask here? Ask for samples of the work and also which parts of the process they're responsible for. Because if you work on a team with 9 other people, that site that I showed a minute ago with the paragraph, I built that site. I did not design that site. I am not a good designer, but I'm happy to recommend the designer that I worked on for that site. So anyway, so if you kind of hired me based on the look of that site, you would have asked the wrong questions. Oh. And then reality. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Essentially, you're likely to get what you pay for, but I certainly would never discourage you from giving somebody a chance to. So that's kind of like one of those tricky balances to strike. But people also starting out, I also would say don't work for peanuts. So, it's definitely tough. That's a sticky one. We can talk a lot about that. That's a Slack question. So how do we hire as a developer? Degrees and certifications don't hurt. The market shifts in interesting directions every few years where it feels like you need a degree to get one of these jobs, or you don't at all and it doesn't matter. So that's the jury's still out on that one. Be curious, be a problem solver, and be intrepid. One of the things as a hiring manager that I always was looking for was somebody with an engineering brain. You know, when you see something doesn't work the way you expected, it's not time to give up. It's time to say, and you know, like sit down and dig in deeper. So that's the kind of thing that usually I'm looking for as a hiring manager. Build things for yourself if no one will pay you. So you can just build, design a new site, optimize something that already exists. You know, if you say like, oh, SoundCloud's going away, I'm gonna build a new SoundCloud. You know, like it doesn't matter if anybody's paying you for it, but that would be nice, right? But like you can host all these files like on your own machine, or you can run them somewhere small. If you don't have to sell it, you don't have to run it as a profitable business. You can just build little demos of things. So don't feel like everything needs to be production ready. Just noodle. Code samples should show a completed idea, and if you pulled in anything else from outside, you know, if you brought in other tools, you should be able to explain what they do and why you chose them. So copy paste is like the bread and butter of being a web developer, but you should be able to figure out what you're doing. Why did I copy and paste this? Why does it work? Why did what I tried before that not work? And so, you know, it's a tough sell in an interview when it's like, oh, what's that thing? You're like, yeah, I just copied that from the internet, I don't know. So through all this, learn your craft and how things work. So we're gonna skip the closing review quiz. There's the summary, which is the same thing that was at the beginning, basically terms and technologies, building a website, and web development professionals. What's next? There's a link here to suggested class sequences, which is one of my favorite things. It is a visual map of a lot of our course offerings. So you all are right here. This is us here at the beginning. There's a couple of branches for that. This is Intro to Programming Concepts, and this is Intro to HTML, and they all kind of open up a lot of doors to other things. Which isn't to say that this is strict. If you have, you know, for whatever reason, an understanding of some parts of this, you should feel free to skip ahead. I would say always talk to the instructors. And then this is just the engineering stuff. Down here we have more like design focused stuff. This is more UX. There's some Photoshop in here. There's some career stuff and some project management stuff. Again, I'm sorry you can't quite read this on that screen. It's super, you know, the text is super tiny anyway. Even if everything is perfectly in focus, you wouldn't be able to read it. Many students will take either Intro to Programming Concepts or Intro to HTML, CSS next. We also encourage you to write about your experience. We love when people write about EDI, and we're really, really happy to promote your writings. So it's totally self-serving as well, because we want to be like, people took our classes and they loved it or they hated it. Yeah. Did you have a question?
Well, yeah, quick question. Say I want to take HTML, CSS. Would I want to do that still if I say went through a lot of courses in Code Academy? Or would that?
It's up to you. I would say that you can like, yes, the question was Intro to HTML, is it good if you've taken, would you still want to take it if you had taken some tutorials on your own? And I think that varies a lot. So you would maybe just talk to the instructor about it. You can also, you know, I mentioned that all of our classes, many of our classes are publicly available. So if you go and take a look at the slides for that class, you can make a decision as to whether that's going to be too easy for you and you should skip to the next one, or whether it would be good reinforcement and an opportunity to ask questions with an instructor and other students there in the class.
Can we pull up these slides?
Yeah, these will go out in email.
Okay.
Elise, can I jump in and say something real quick?
Please.
Oh, yes. So something I found really helpful as a student, because I started out taking classes through GDI, was, for example, with JavaScript. I did it on Code Academy, and I don't think I really understood it, but it was helpful to walk through it. And then when I took the class with GDI, I like kind of knew the verbiage, and so then it clicked a little more, and then I did another class after, and so I feel like a layered approach kind of helps.
So Code Academy was like a primer.
It was a great primer.
Okay.
Yeah, it made me feel confident kind of going into the class.
Thanks, man. Cool. So I think this is my second to last slide. We also encourage everybody to get involved, join the Slack community. If you're comfortable in some technology, we welcome you to Teaching Assist. You can suggest a class. And we are looking into mentoring as a formal program. So there's a link to all the forms there. And then the last thing, and I will send this out to the kids.
Oh, sorry, I had a question.
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, in regards to hardware and someone who's starting out new,
can I use like a $200 like Chromebook, or do I have to invest in some type of like massive Mac and desktop or whatever to build HTML or use HTML, CSS?
Chromebooks in specific are a little bit tricky because of how software gets installed on them. But I think that there are pretty good web interfaces for coding that you could potentially take a class on. I don't know if I would use that for actually building a website because you want to be able to like have all your stuff locally as opposed to hosted in the cloud. So I'm not an expert on Chromebooks, but you know, I mean, you need a text editor is basically it. You can do really cheap thing. I would say look at used for sure. So this is the last slide. I will send this link out, but it's really important. I would love for y'all to fill out a survey. Just tell us about, you know, how we did, what you're interested in, how you like the space. This is our first time in this space, things like that. It's very quick. We usually have people do it in like the last 5 minutes of class, but since this is now that computer class, I know not everybody has their stuff out. So I will send this out too. I would really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for being here tonight. I will be around for questions. The one thing that Jen was going to mention earlier that I asked her not to is we have a happy hour next week because I'm leaving. This is my last class. So feel free to come. I'll probably just cry all night, but you should come and meet people because it's going to be really cool. My mom's going to be there. She's a GDI student sometimes. So yeah, so definitely if you want to come out and meet some more people in the community, it should be a lot of fun. We'll be at 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 25th. Tuesday. Yes. A week from today. Ha! Nice. Awesome. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.